welcome back to the channel. My name's Bryony and I'm one half of the Indecisive Readers. Today I'm here to finally do my January wrap up. I thought we were in January now. We have passed January and now we are in February. God. In January I started my TBR game, which is like TBR Twister. I have prompts categorized by colours. So I have like physical book content, community prompts and other. And then I have to choose them based on the format of the prompt I am given. I haven't done very well at that. I read all the books, but I didn't necessarily read them all in the format given, so I need to work out if I'm going to have some sort of punishment. But as I go through the books, I will explain to you what has happened. So in January, I managed to read 10 books, which was good for me because at the beginning of the month, I just wasn't really... It wasn't that I wasn't reading, it was I wasn't finishing. I kept picking up another book and another book and another book and just not finishing them. So the fact I did actually get 10 finished within the month is really good for me. It was a total of 3,552 pages, which is pretty cool. And my average rating was about 3.9 stars. So I'll just jump in, explain the books I read, what prompts I read them for, and whether or not I enjoyed them. The first book I read in January was for the prompt subscription box and I had to read a physical book for that, so I read The Gilded Ones by Namina Fauna. This is a African-inspired fantasy about girls who are born with golden blood and therefore are cursed as demons, but there's a kind of plan going on by the Emperor to use these women, girls, demon things, as weapons. He kind of creates his own army using them. So I really enjoyed it. I decided to pick it up in January finally after having got it in June, I want to say, because it actually came out at the start of February. This wasn't technically an arc, but it was kind of like finished book, but not a advanced copy, which doesn't make any sense. But I thought I'd read it so I could review it in time, and I really enjoyed it. When I picked it up, it was really quick to read. Like I could read kind of 20 pages in about 10 minutes. Which was really good. It was very easy to read, and I think that was because it was just YA fantasy and I don't often reach for those at the moment. So I really enjoyed it when I did pick it up. It's quite fast paced. It had a lot of kind of twist to it that I wasn't expecting near the end, and there was also a lot of world building and kind of a god system, a magic system. It's a very patriarchal society, but I liked how that was explored. I liked how it kind of created this narrative of women being demons, and then the story was like, well, let's look at that a bit closer. I also really love the relationships in this, especially the friendships. The romance I didn't think was as necessary. It almost felt like it was there because it was a YA and you have to have a romance in a YA, but also to show that demons can be lovable. But I think it was mainly there to show that there was a connection, but it was just a bit frustrating because there was such a strong connection between the friends. I was a bit like, you don't need that for a romance, but I did really enjoy it. I rated it about 4 stars. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I read this for the prompt book that's been on your TBR for over a year, and it was to read a physical book. Now, I will admit, I started the physical book and then apparently got 132 pages, and then I picked up the ebook because I needed to pick up this and I didn't have an ebook of this, and I could get the ebook of this through the library and I just needed to get through it. I wasn't getting through my physical books quick enough, so I did pick up the ebooks. So count one for one that I changed, but I really enjoyed it. It's tricky to explain what it's about. It's about a guy who finds a book in the library, and the book in the library has lots of stories in it, and one of the stories is about him. And then he starts on a quest to learn more about it. I really enjoyed it. I rated it 4 stars. I thought it was a very whimsical book, and I like how it towed the line between fantasy and reality, both kind of in our world but also in stories. I thought that was really interesting. I liked how all the stories within it, because like each kind of chapter started with a story. I like how they all kind of twisted together, and it produced some kind of surprises I wasn't expecting. It was quite slow to read, I found, because it almost read like a collection of bedtime stories, but I did still enjoy it and would definitely read again, I think. read it again and kind of annotate. I loved how it made me think about stories. It also had a queer main character, and that's cool. The next book I'm going to talk about is for the prompt short story and the format physical. So I have chosen Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Sean Ann Maguire. I did actually, again, read this as an ebook because, again, I wasn't reading physical books, and although this would be quick to read, I could get it from my library straight away, and so I did that. I'm very sorry. This is the second book in the Wayward Children series. It's like a series that vaguely follows on from each other, but also you don't have to read them in order, and it doesn't matter if you don't get them read. And this follows some characters that were in the first one, but it tells their story, and so I thought that was really fun. I thought getting to like firsthand see this world that we kind of only heard about in the first one was great. I know that some people don't love this series, but I have a personal attachment to the first one, and therefore I like this one too. I like that this also had some queer characters. One of the main characters was gay and was in a relationship with another girl. I thought it was a really interesting commentary on kind of gender and gender expectations, and then by extension how damaging some of those can be. I thought that was really interesting, and I just loved the kind of storytelling, the narrative voice in it, and I definitely recommend. The next book I have to talk about from January was Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This was for an ebook format, and the prompt was book that has sold well but you don't know why. Sorry, did I interrupt you? I didn't read it physically, however, I also didn't read it as an ebook. I was meant to read the ebook, but although I enjoyed it, I never found myself reaching to read it as an ebook, whereas when it was an audiobook, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm enjoying this. So I decided to just kind of like bite the bullet and be like, well, I'm not going to do it in the right format, let's just read it as I can. And I did enjoy it when I read it. I rated it, I think, about 3 stars just because I didn't have that drive to read it, and I still don't know why it did really well, which is ironic obviously that is the prompt, but I think it's done well because it's this heist book which everyone knows. So if you don't know what it's about a group of 6 people who try and break into like a prison to steal someone who can do magic, I think. And yeah, I've read a couple, I don't want to say a couple of heist books, but I've read a couple of books with heists, and I think because I've read those already, this wasn't necessarily groundbreaking. Yes, it did have some surprises that surprised me, it had some twists that I wasn't expecting, but I didn't think it was necessarily amazing. I liked some of the characters, and I liked Kaz especially. I think his relationship with Ined is really interesting, and I know it's not going to, I know it's not going to develop in the conventional way, but I'm interested to see where it will go in the sequel. I liked how all the characters interacted together, and I liked the kind of magic system and the different types of magic. But yeah, I didn't love it as much as everyone else, but I pick up the sequel, and I also have Shadow and Bone. Maybe I'll read some of them at least before the show comes out. I don't really know how the show's gonna mix and match, so we will see. The postman keeps driving past, and I'm very sad because I need one more book that I want to hold up for this video, but it's not here, and I keep hoping it's in the post van, but she's driven past twice now and I don't think it's gonna come. The next book I have to talk about from January was for a physical book and a book in an unconventional format. Oh, it's driven past again. She's just teasing me. All I want is my book. Yeah, for this I was probably thinking of something in like prose or graphic novel, or just kind of with some pictures on the page. So I chose The Girl Who Gave Zero Fucks by Amy Charlotte Keane. Sam got this for me for Christmas, and I think it's great. It's basically about a girl who decides she's not going to give any fucks anymore. Usually girls have to keep all their fucks in a basket, and she decides that no, she's going to keep them all for herself and not give them out to anyone. When they make fun of her, when they're mean to her, she's just going to be her own person. And I thought this was obviously really, really funny. It was so simple to read. It was really quick. I kept delaying it, but I was like, no, I'm gonna read it, and I've sent Sam an audio of me reading it to him, which is fun. And yeah, it was just very funny. I don't obviously have a lot to say about it because it's only like 80 pages long, but what I really liked was, obviously the theme is meant to be quite feminist, but there were like all these little nods to kind of feminist, I want to say icons, historical women, and kind of the witch trials and things, and I thought that was like just really cool. Let me see if I can find a picture, like Beyonce. Okay, so I can't find another example immediately, but I just thought it was very cool how it was just like, here are all these other women through history that also haven't given fucks, and I liked it. Rated it 4 or 5 stars. Don't quite know how to rate something like that. I think I rated it 5 stars. The final prompt I had was a friend recommends, and it was for an audiobook, which worked out really well because Sam had been getting me to try and read Blackwing by Ed McDonnell for a few months, I want to say. I was pushing it off because I thought it was kind of like a crime, because for some reason that's what I thought it was, but it really wasn't. It was a fantasy. And so I read the first one as an audiobook, and then I needed another audiobook and picked up the sequel as well because I was borrowing it off Sam and he had them both. I don't really know how to explain it because as I will explain, I kind of didn't really, I don't want to say I didn't pay attention, but like it didn't go in the first one. But it's about, hang on, let's just get a blurb. The Republic faces annihilation despite the vigilance of Gal Harrow's Blackwings. When a raven tattoo rips itself from his arm to deliver a desperate message, Gal Harrow and a mysterious noblewoman must investigate a long-dead sorcerer's legacy. But there is a conspiracy within the Citadel. Flesh-eaters and the ghosts of the wastelands seek to destroy them, but if they cannot solve the ancient wizard's paradox, the Deep Kings will walk the earth again, and all will be lost. The war with the Eastern Empire ended in a stalemate some 80 years ago. Thanks to Nor's engine, a wizard-crafted weapon so powerful even the Deep Kings feared it. The strike of the engine created the Misery, a wasteland full of ghosts and corrupted magic that now forms a no-man's land along the frontier. But when Gal Harrow investigates a frontier fortress, he discovers complacency bordering on treason. Then the walls are stormed and the engine fails to launch. Gal Harrow only escapes because of the preternatural magical power of the noblewoman he was supposed to be protecting. Together they race to the capital to unmask the traitors and restore the public's defences. Far across the Misery, a vast army is on the move as the Empire prepares to call the Republic's bluff. I'm not sure really that explained it any better than I could. I'm just as confused, haven't read that. But I basically enjoyed it, but felt like I didn't pay attention to it enough. It was full of so much world building and so many characters that it just kind of went over my head. But then I did read the sequel, and by the time I'd read the sequel, because I'd read the first, like I could appreciate it more and I did enjoy it. But yeah, because it was an audiobook, I just missed a lot of the details, but I did think the audiobook narrator was perfectly chosen for it. It had like a really proper gruff voice that suited the character. Now I thought the main character, Gal Harrow, was really interesting. He's kind of like broken and a hardened soldier, and I liked how that was explored in the books. I liked his relationships with characters. There was a bit of a romance in the first one that I didn't care for when it actually was a romance, when it was just kind of like a bit of pining. I was like, oh, this is cool. But then they were in a romance and I'm like, I'm less cool with it now. In the sequel, he's almost like a father figure to someone, and I thought that was really interesting. I liked his relationships, like friendship-wise, with people. There's a character called Ned, and she was scary, but also so interesting. There were a lot of kind of strong female characters, and they were complex. And like there's this Ned who is again a proper hardened criminal, really gruff, like is missing her nose, and then at one point she kind of gets into a relationship with someone and just starts feeling kind of really sad, really self-conscious about the way she looks, and I just thought that was really nice to see this hardened criminal, but kind of a hardened criminal with a soft side. And I did like the magic in the world building, and I could see how stories like this have kind of influenced Sam's writing style, so I liked reading it for that reason. Now obviously the sequel, I read Raven Cry, as well. I also read 3 more books. The first one I want to talk about is The Darkest Rising, which is book 2 in the Darkest Rising sequence. I think there are going to be 5 stories. There are 5 stories. I'm listening to the audiobooks from the library at the moment, so then maybe I can go back and read it at some point. But I really enjoyed it. I'm slightly confused about it though, because I didn't think I'd read this before. But before I read this, there was a scene that was vividly in my head that I'm like 90% sure wasn't in the film. So maybe I just read this one, but not the first one, which is confusing. But it basically follows a boy called Will Stanton who turns 11, and then his kind of magical history, his magical powers are revealed. It came out way before Harry Potter, but because the Harry Potter films were made first, when this was made into a film, they had to change a lot of parts of it and it wasn't as good. But as its own thing, I really enjoyed it, and that's why I picked up the books. But looking back at the film, having read the book, I'm a bit like, oh, it's really bad. It's really, really different. But I did enjoy it. I liked that this kind of set up the bigger story more. I think the first one was almost a bit like a prequel. I feel like the rest of the books are going to follow Will more, and also the other characters that are introduced and the wider story that is introduced. I was slightly confused because I thought this was going to have a bigger Arthurian kind of element to it, but it didn't. But that's fine. I'm sure it will come up again, and I hope it does because I enjoyed it. But yeah, definitely recommend it. It would almost be a really good Christmassy book because this one in particular is based around kind of like midwinter. But yeah, it was good. I rated it 3 stars. The next 2 books I have were like my top 2 of the month. If I hadn't read the final book, this one would be my favourite of the month. It was so good. And that was 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes. I actually ended up listening to the audiobook of this because it was available then and there, and I needed another audiobook. And Natalie Haynes actually narrates it herself, which was really interesting. She's got such a beautiful voice. I loved how she narrated it. And this is basically a retelling. I don't know if it's a retelling. It's almost like a re-exploration of the Trojan War, but through the voices and the eyes of the women that experienced it. The only one who doesn't necessarily tell her own story is Helen, who is the reason why it all happens. And that's quite interesting. There's a quote from the muse behind it who says about the guy who's then writing the story. She said, "But he hasn't understood at all. I'm not offering him the story of one woman during the Trojan War. I'm offering him the story of all the women in the war. Well, most of them. I haven't decided on Helen yet. She gets on my nerves." I just thought that was wonderful. I thought Natalie Haynes' voice, her narrative voice, suited this story so well. It was like very sassy, and it kind of made sense for these women that were like immensely frustrated by all the men around them. A lot of them were also hurt by the men around them, but the ones that are just like, oh god, these humans, these men just squabbling, it suited that. It kind of follows not only like actual real life women, but it does follow the gods as well. And I loved learning, one, about how like all these women had like a part in it, but 2, how all the different stories intersected. I feel like it would be a very good first kind of look at the Trojan War. I have obviously read some like retellings before, like I have read The Song of Achilles and I have read The Silence of the Girls, but I think this is the most like accessible one for getting a wider kind of idea of it. Maybe it's because the other 2 just kind of focus in, but I really like this. It would definitely normally get like top of the pile of the year, but I knew I was going to like this because I really like The Children of Jocasta. So I put hold on Pandora's Jar, which is the one she came out with this year, and I'm really looking forward to reading that one too. So the final book I have, which like I said, I'm very frustrated I can't hold up because I have pre-ordered it. It is stuck coming from America. I believe it is currently in the country. It has been in the country for 2 days. but it's not here, which is very annoying. But the final book I read was The Mask Fallen by Samantha Shannon. Oh my god, my heart hurts. This book, well, this series, this is the fourth book in the series. This series follows a character called Paige Mahoney, who is a clairvoyant in a world where clairvoyance shouldn't exist. She lives in London, is part of a gang in London, and then one day she gets captured and taken to the city of Oxford, which supposedly got destroyed 200 years ago, and now there's a secret politics going on in Oxford. And obviously events spiral from there. I can't really say what because spoilers. But yeah, this is the fourth one, and in this one she is in Paris with Arcturus. This book cemented Paige and Arcturus's relationship as like my now OTP. Oh my god, those two make my heart ache. Like every time they interact with each other, even if it's just kind of like making dinner for each other, chatting, I'm just so happy. I loved how their relationship developed in this. I loved how Paige got to explore her sexuality because she's demisexual and that is so important to me. I love how she got to explore it, how she got to kind of discuss it with Arcturus, and those two are so important to me and mean so much in terms of just general intimacy. Their relationship is so, one, well developed, but two, so intimate in a non-sexual way. Now, this book very much has an adult scene in it, but that's not the only intimate part. Like, they literally like strip themselves bare at some points, like show each other all their scars. They talk to each other about their emotional, mental scars. And Paige really suffers from trauma in this one, and I love how she got to explore it. I like how she was still given time to recover. I also like that although she had time to recover, some things won't always get fixed easily, and they will still hurt her, and she will still make bad decisions because of this trauma. And it just really hurt. The end left me with so many questions. I want to read the next one straight away. But also, I want to reread this because it has opened up and closed so many questions from previous books. But I also don't want to reread it because the end hurt me so much. I'm just going to stop at the end of chapter 21 where it's all happy and I can live in that happiness for a while. But in terms of the rest of the book, I really liked how it explored both the wider world in terms of kind of location, because Samantha Shannon has hit before that this is going to be a dystopian book on the scale of fantasy. And I can see that, and it's starting to play out in this. I know it's going to happen a lot more in the fifth book. And it was just interesting. And once again, I love seeing how and where our history and our kind of culture has intersected with theirs. Some of the big events in this were like inspired by Jack the Ripper, and I like seeing where that kind of came in more and where like musicians from our world are in theirs. It's just so interesting. And yeah, obviously I rated it 5 stars. I'm broken. So these are most of the books I read in January. Like I said, I had a fantastic reading month. All of them were like 3 stars or higher, which is great. And I got a couple of new favourites, which is great at the start of the year. Starting the year on a high, although I also started the year on pain. So that's cool. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, if you've read any of them, let me know in the comments. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're not already, and I will see you in another video.